A video displayed a gathering crowd, focusing on someone in a bear costume. The man inside shed the bulky suit, revealing himself, and professed his love to a young woman, asking her to be his girlfriend. However, the girl responded with a stark rejection, citing their mere 1-month acquaintance. She followed this by insulting his looks, stating she could never be attracted to him, as he was unworthy of her. The onlookers laughed and kept filming the mortifying spectacle. Suddenly, another young woman intervened, attempting to disperse the crowd and urging them to cease filming. Currently, the man from the video, Chen, sat before his computer, rewatching his own public humiliation. Head hung low in despair, he tried to stifle his sorrow by eating, taking a tearful bite from a burger. His childhood friend, Lacey, called, her voice cheerful as she invited him to her birthday celebration. Tears still flowing, Chen managed to wish her a happy birthday, his internal turmoil unnoticed by Lacey. She pressed him to join her and her friends at a cake bar, but Chen abruptly ended the conversation, leaving Lacey disheartened. One of Lacey's friends suggested she put Chen out of her mind and enjoy the birthday feast they had prepared, but Lacey remained worried about her longtime friend. Alone in his room, Chen sank deeper into sorrow. A message from Lacey arrived, an attempt to lift his spirits, reminding him that he was always her brightest dawn. Chen mumbled apologies to himself, eating ravenously as tears fell, feeling utterly worthless and undeserving of Lacey's friendship. He continued to consume food without restraint until, abruptly, a piece became lodged in his throat, cutting off his air supply. He tumbled from his chair, collapsing to the floor with a heavy impact. Thus, Chen met his end by eating excessively. He had never accomplished anything significant in life, and even in death, felt like a failure. As he fell into a void of nothingness, memories of his early life surfaced. He remembered being tormented about his weight from a young age. Most peers avoided sitting near him, claiming it felt constricting. Even his own mother deserted him when his father became ill and subsequently died from cancer, leaving him utterly alone during his most vulnerable time. Chen kept falling into the abyss, the cold darkness enveloping him. A voice announced he had unlocked the ultimate starter pack for newbies. A blinding light enveloped him, and everything went dark. After some time, Chen slowly opened his eyes, noticing a sticky sensation on his hands. Confused to find himself alive, he rose and switched on the light in his room. Gazing in the mirror, he was completely astonished, his entire appearance had transformed. He had shed a considerable amount of weight. Chen pinched himself in front of the mirror, struggling to believe his reality. The pain confirmed he wasn't dreaming. As he admired his new look, an internal voice spoke again, informing him he had acquired the beginner's gift pack. He panicked, searching for the source of the voice. The voice continued, explaining he was the destined chosen one and introducing itself as Nicholas, his intelligent sensory hub. Chen was momentarily stunned but eventually accepted the situation, noting its resemblance to fantasy games and comics he knew. He activated the system, which explained his fat-to-skill exchange system allowed him to swap body fat for skill points, enabling a cheap mode path to a better life. Given his previous large amount of fat, Chen assumed this would make him powerful. Testing this, he slammed his hand on a table, only to feel intense pain. This proved him wrong, leading him to conclude he was still a failure. Nicholas offered encouragement, assuring him skills would unlock upon leveling up. The system had also prepared a starter gift. He had unlocked the ultimate mealtime companion called Mouthpart Enhancement. Chen found this peculiar and questioned its validity as a skill. Nicholas explained activation boosted the host's body, providing a full enhancement to senses and endurance. Just as the system began explaining the skill's most vital aspect, Chen's phone rang. It was Lacey, calling frantically and begging for his assistance. Meanwhile, on the other end, one of Lacey's friends, who had previously shown romantic interest, was enraged by her rejection. He accused her of misleading him, insisting he had treated her well. He demanded to know what he lacked compared to her loser friend. Lacey tried to get past him, but the man grabbed her arm forcefully, clearly intending not to let her go. As fear started to overwhelm Lacey, the room door suddenly burst open, revealing an enraged Chen. He ordered the man to release Lacey. However, the door comically swung shut on him, leaving him flustered. Trying again, he yelled at the men to free Lacey, cutting a rather pathetic figure. The men found him amusing and laughed. Despite this, Chen stood firm, once more demanding they release the young woman. The main aggressor, clearly irritated, shouted back, questioning Chen's audacity in giving him orders. Chen suddenly recognized his rashness and sought help from the system. Nicholas informed him that at his current low level, the only usable skill was King's Contempt, the initial one he received. This skill required no energy points and was intended to deliver a devastating mental impact on the target. Chen envisioned what might occur if he overwhelmed the men with this power. However, as he drifted into thought, the leader noticed him spaced out and confronted him. Ignoring the leader, Chen focused on Lacey, assuring her he would manage the situation and ensure her safety. Meanwhile, Lacey was struggling to recognize him. The leader laughed at Chen, mocked his confidence, and warned him to concern himself instead. Chen then deployed his skill, causing the leader to experience unbearable pain in his head, forcing him to kneel in agony. Smiling with satisfaction, Chen realized the ability had succeeded. He marveled at its effectiveness, astonished he hadn't needed to physically exert himself to inflict harm. The system informed him there was a 5% probability the skill could induce a berserk state in his foe, driving them into a frenzy and causing them to lose all rationality. As he considered this, the leader suddenly became berserk, grabbing Chen by the collar and starting to attack him. Chen realized this was the skill's side effect and, frustrated, called it lame while pleading with Nicholas for assistance. Unfortunately, the system informed him his points were depleted, making it impossible to redeem further skills. As the leader continued his assault, Chen looked to Lacey for help, but she fled, unwilling to assist him. Chen felt his final glimmer of optimism vanish as he realized his childhood friend didn't recognize him due to his altered appearance. Just then, the leader shoved him into a nearby table, resulting in Chen hitting his back with a loud impact. Despite the injury, Chen willed himself to resist. The leader then approached Chen, a bottle in his hand. Chen told him to leave, but the leader, still in a berserk state, ignored him. Desperately, Chen looked for something he could use as a weapon and spotted leftover food on the table. Without hesitation, he began consuming the food, eliciting laughter and looks of revulsion from the other men. They mockingly called him a pig, ridiculing him for focusing on eating when his life was in danger. Undeterred by their jeers, Chen continued to devour the food. The men sneered at his gluttony, telling him gorging like a maniac wouldn't rescue him. The leader of the group finally reached Chen, sarcastically asking if he was satisfied. At that precise moment, Chen heard Nicholas inform him he had accumulated sufficient points to acquire another skill. Without hesitation, Chen confirmed his desire for the skill just as the leader raised the bottle to strike him. The mental resonance skill activated, halting the leader mid-action. Suddenly, tears streamed down the leader's face as an overwhelming wave of bitterness washed over him. He dropped the bottle and began crying uncontrollably, declaring his love for Chen. Heartbroken by the sight of a bruised and battered Chen, the leader began lamenting the pain Chen must have suffered. In the leader's distorted perception, Chen appeared as a charming and lovely man, even though in reality, Chen was furious at the person who had just assaulted him. Oblivious to Chen's real feelings, the leader affectionately hugged him, his emotions and actions entirely manipulated by the mental resonance skill. Chen was in complete shock at the strange turn of events. He rejected the leader's advances and, looking towards the other men, jokingly wondered if any of them might like him instead. Devastated by the rejection, the leader turned to his companions for comfort, seeking their support to heal his heartbreak. Just then, Lacey arrived with the authorities, having reported the incident. To her surprise, she found the men seeming to enjoy themselves together, completely unaware of the preceding chaos. Later, Chen sat by himself, contemplating the peculiar sequence of events. With newfound resolve, he vowed to become a better version of himself to protect himself and those he cared for. Suddenly, his stomach growled, and he headed home to eat. The following day, Chen received a call from a colleague asking if he had forgotten about his part-time job, reminding him it was payday. Hearing this, Chen rushed to get out of bed but immediately stumbled and fell. When he looked in the mirror, he found himself extremely thin and weak. This was disheartening, as he had promised himself the previous day to strive to become a better person. Nicholas informed him he had overdrawn his system and needed to replenish energy by consuming more fat. Despite his extreme weakness, Chen forced himself to search for food. Opening his fridge, the only item he found was a hot pot base. Having no other option, he quickly ate it. Later, on his way to work, Chen swore he would never eat hot pot again. However, Nicholas warned him his fat reserves were still inadequate for daily system functions and insisted he must continue eating. Chen finally arrived at his job. He went directly to the locker room to change but was surprised to find it deserted. He called out for his colleague, Leo, but realized no one was present as they were on their lunch break. Surveying the kitchen, Chen spotted delicious food arranged on a table. Overcome by an intense urge to eat, he struggled to resist but ultimately succumbed. He grabbed a burger and began devouring it, quickly eating everything while crying and worrying if his upcoming paycheck would cover the cost. With this act, he unlocked another skill, powerful saliva, capable of dissolving anything into powder, enhancing his digestion to better convert fat into energy. Chen found this skill absurd and wished for something more advantageous. As he continued eating, Chen heard Leo's voice. He peeked out and saw Leo being reprimanded by the owner for his clumsiness and for Chen's lateness. The owner told Leo not to return again. Leo, however, refused to leave without receiving payment for their month's labor. The other crew members laughed at him as the owner mocked him, suggesting he should focus on losing weight so he could fit into a coffin. She cruelly ordered him out of her sight, accusing him of spoiling appetites and obstructing the entrance. With a malicious expression, she commanded him to leave. Witnessing his friend being bullied, Chen was filled with fury. Unconsciously, he squeezed a bottle of sauce so tightly in his hand that it squirted directly into the owner's face. The woman turned towards him, her face twisted with pure anger. Seeing her fury, Chen began to panic, frantically wondering what to do next. Feeling remorseful, he revealed himself and apologized to the owner. However, in the owner's perception, he was not a random nobody but a charming young man resembling a lost puppy. Finding him so pathetic yet charming, the owner's mood shifted, and she told him it was nothing serious. Realizing he was out of trouble, he attempted to placate her and remain in her good graces. The woman told him he had certainly come to the right establishment, as their bar served delicious food. After this comment, he walked past her, pulling Leo with him, declaring he would treat Leo to lunch instead of enduring further insults. The owner seemed to be captivated by his charm even more. Despite his aloofness, his handsomeness was striking. She sat beside him as he rapidly ate, telling him to eat as much as he desired, promising to return after attending to some matters. Once they were alone, Chen asked Leo why he wasn't eating. Leo lowered his head, stating he didn't have money to pay. However, Chen simply smiled and declared the meal was entirely his treat. Witnessing how quickly Chen ate, Leo questioned if he could genuinely afford the bill. Chen simply pointed at the bar's promotion: if one person drank 48 beers in a single day, their entire tab would be free. Leo was astonished, finding this an seemingly impossible feat internally. Chen was confident in his capacity and requested the waiter bring him the beers. He proceeded to gulp down bottles one after another, further captivating the owner, who found him charming while drinking. Meanwhile, Leo watched in disbelief at the speed Chen was consuming the beer. In moments, he had downed several bottles without showing signs of intoxication. The owner praised his impressive alcohol tolerance. After confirming his friend had finished eating, Chen eagerly attempted to leave the bar with Leo. However, the owner tried to stop him, reminding him he hadn't settled the bill. Chen then stated he had consumed 50 bottles of liquor, meaning their bill was free according to the promotion. He added she could keep the 2 extra bottles as a tip. The woman was about to yell at them, but Chen looked at her with his charming expression, silencing her as she melted at how cool he appeared. While walking home, Chen revealed his true identity to Leo, leaving his friend utterly astonished. Leo then inquired how he had suddenly lost so much weight. Chen was on the verge of disclosing his secret but hesitated, instead telling his friend he had undergone liposuction. Leo expressed concern, stating their former boss was rumored to have mob connections and fearing she might seek revenge. Chen was also worried about his safety, particularly as the owner didn't know his real identity. Because of this, he called the police and reported the boss's pub for selling counterfeit alcohol before hanging up. Leo was skeptical about filing a false report, but Chen assured him it wasn't false, as he had confirmed the alcohol he drank earlier was fake. In fact, it lacked the necessary fat content, which he had detected. With this knowledge, they celebrated, knowing they had managed to get back at their cruel boss, and continued celebrating on their way home. The following day, a man read the news about the bar's closure after authorities found it was selling fake alcohol. The man puffed his cigar, irritated that someone had interfered with his establishment. He then summoned his subordinate and ordered him to locate the individual responsible. In a convenience store, the two friends shared a meal, having lost their jobs. School was starting soon, but they had lost their source of funds for tuition. While Leo worried, Chen acted nonchalant, claiming his parents had left enough money on a card for tuition. As his friend continued to fret, he assured him he would sort things out, even ordering 10 additional bowls of noodles and behaving as if finances were no concern. As his system indicated, he was indeed a bottomless pit when it came to food. At school, Chen attempted to pay his tuition but was informed the card's balance was insufficient. He was utterly shocked seeing the tiny amount remaining in his account. The long queue behind him started murmuring, and he was told he had only 3 more days to pay. Stepping aside and freezing momentarily in thought, he suddenly pulled at his hair in frustration, realizing the system was rapidly depleting his funds by demanding so much food daily. He knew he had to resolve this himself, as his parents were likely struggling to earn enough for his sister's treatment. While he was deep in thought, Sheena and her friends walked past. One of the girls noticed him, and they shifted their attention to the attractive young man with messy hair, sad eyes, and long, straight legs. Considering how unfamiliar he was, they concluded he must be a freshman. They hadn't encountered anyone like him before. One friend was certain someone as cool as him wouldn't even look at them. However, they felt this surely didn't apply to Sheena, the campus goddess who seemingly no man could resist. Calling her friends hopeless, she decided to play along and made her move to help them get closer to him. With a confident smile, she stepped forward and instructed her friends to watch closely. She approached subtly, but it was enough to catch his attention. Chen noticed and immediately recognized her. She appeared pleased to see him looking over. That said, his painful memories flooded back, and the scene of her rejection replayed in his mind. After his confession, she had looked at him with revulsion, calling him a useless pig and stating a toad like him could never compare to a swan like her. During this moment, Sheena suddenly stumbled and exaggerated her fall. This was part of her plan, designed to make her land in his arms and make eye contact with the handsome young man. However, to her surprise, he didn't move at all and simply allowed her to bump into his chest. She tried to understand why he hadn't stabilized her but continued, lightly holding onto his body while apologizing for bumping into him. With her hand on his chest, she could feel his heart beating rapidly, revealing the truth behind his seemingly cold reaction. She was certain he had succumbed to her charm and fallen for her in that moment. Unfortunately, when she looked up to meet his gaze, she encountered an odd look, very different from what she typically saw. While Sheena was left completely bewildered, Leo called out to Chen, stating he had been searching everywhere for him. Sheena's confusion intensified upon hearing the familiar name. Suddenly, the man she was leaning on was gone, and she found herself on the ground, having fallen without support. While she was baffled by the sight, her friends didn't miss the chance to record the campus crush's humiliating moment, which worsened as she weakly reached out towards Chen. Without turning to face her, he remarked he would become an internet celebrity because of her and asked her not to fake an injury on the main road, as she was obstructing pedestrian traffic. The entire situation left the young woman appalled and insulted, and she was practically fuming with anger. Conversely, her two friends quickly hurried to the young man, showering him with praise for his new appearance. Abandoned and alone, she stared at them in disbelief and labeled them little witches. A crowd began to gather around Chen as people noticed his transformation, and Leo kindly cleared a path for them. As the two walked away, others also started noticing Sheena, who was supposed to embody dignity as the campus goddess. They snickered and stifled their laughter at the young woman who had never experienced such humiliation. Later, the two friends had lunch at the academy, and Leo asked if his friend had enjoyed the assist earlier. However, Chen couldn't respond, as he was too preoccupied with rapidly consuming his food. Finally setting his meal down for a moment, tears welled up as he expressed his sincere gratitude and admitted he had nearly lost control when the heartbreaker leaned on him after her staged trip. Returning to the topic of his tuition funds, Leo offered to ask his parents for extra money in case Chen needed financial assistance. Chen stated there was no need to worry, as he already had a plan. Seeing his friend's confused expression, he decided to clarify, showing him his phone screen. On it was an advertisement for a streaming competition focused exclusively on attracting viewers through an eating show. Leo was incredulous at what he was shown, but the young man, known for his appetite, was entirely serious, stating no one could surpass him in that domain. The system offered little support, instead reminding him of the dwindling hours until his energy reserves were depleted.